as we gather here in this time, in this space, and think about our time together today. We are grateful that we can continue a series that speaks about our rootedness, our values in our spiritual journey, inspired by the words that are seen on our newest banner in the room, those inspired by the mission and vision and values of Meewasin Valley United Church in Saskatoon. And as we make our way through how we're rooted in these words and in these values, we today ponder how we're rooted in our responsibility to ourselves, to each other, to the world. And so we gather in this time looking to feel rooted in this place and in this time we have with each other. And as we do that, we gather with music and the gift of music as shared by our ensemble. Welcome to this gathering of Southminster Steinhauer United Church. Welcome to this circle of spiritual seekers who are uniting in community. Isn't this a wonderful time to be together this morning? Not just because it's Sunday morning, but because we can be together with one another. When we're in community, we see the light in each other and the light in ourselves in a new way. And so we gather here together this morning, celebrating the long history of who we are as community. When we gather, we're always recognizing that we're a community that has long been about each other and reaching out to others. We've long been about a place of spiritual exploration, a community of diverse seekers, a circle where we're invited to open ourselves to each other and to the depth of living. So as we gather here, we know that we're welcome just as we are. So as we join the circle and experience openness to whatever we need in this circle this morning, opening ourselves to whatever we might seek, we light this candle as a way of celebrating the light in us, in all of us, the light that connects us, that binds us in the love that connects the human community, not forgetting that that love is stronger than any hate, stronger than any violence and any darkness that we witness and we hear and we see in our world, recognizing that the light of this love is strong because we keep it strong. May we celebrate that light in our world today. We too celebrate the land that we gather on. And as we celebrate that we meet here on Treaty 6 territory, we honor the indigenous tribes and cultures, the Métis Nation, and all the nations that have gathered on this land, that continue to gather on this land, and that we may call partners. So let us join, indigenous, non-indigenous, all together, to proclaim this place a peaceful one of love, one of justice, one of kindness, one of responsibility. All right, it's story time. Anyone who'd like to hear a story, well, open your ears. But if you'd like to hear it up close, come to the carpet. Lots of room. We'll make room. Good morning, everyone. It is really great to see you all. I want to talk about a big word today: responsibility. Not a fun word, is it? Does anyone have anything that they are supposed to be doing at home that is a responsible thing to do? Something that maybe it's a job that you have to do around the house or something you're asked to do. What do you have to be responsible about at your house? Doing your chores. What are some of those chores? Making your bed. Okay, wow. Helping make breakfast. How about you?
Every day after school, I bring my things to my mom.
Every day after school, you have to bring your school things to your mom? That's an important responsibility. How about you, William?
You have to clean the house.
Clean the house. Mm-hmm. The house gets dirty a lot, doesn't it? It does. We always have to clean the house. Yes? You have responsibility charts? Wow. Amazing. Oh, Silas. You go to preschool, play school, and I bet you have to put away your toys. Do you? Yes. Mm-hmm. Can I read you a story? It's called What If Everybody Did That? It's by Ellen Javernick, and my pictures are really tiny, so look up at the wall because they're really good up there and big. Okay, when we went to the zoo, I fed just a little of my popcorn to the bear. The zookeeper waved his broom and said, "What if everybody did that?" And then I really like these pictures because you see like pizza and steak and cheese and watermelons all getting thrown into, and donuts going to the bears. Well, those bears are looking pretty chubby. I just wanted to see how fast the grocery cart would go. It went faster than I expected. When the manager stopped me, she said, "What if everybody did that?" Oh dear. A lot of crashes. Let's look at the next one. On the way to visit Grandma and Grandpa in Kansas, I dropped just one soda can out of the window. The police officer who pulled us over said, "What if everybody did that?" Imagine how messy the world would get. Oh. At Uncle William's wedding, I took just a little lick of the icing from the fancy cake. The lady behind the table glared at me over her glasses and said, "What if everyone did that?" Well, there wouldn't be much of a wedding cake left. It would be pretty gross, yeah. I told the babysitter that I took a bath just once a year. As she shooed me into the bathroom, she said, "What if everybody did that?" Oof. During story time, I had something important to say. I just couldn't wait till the end of the story. And the storyteller put her finger to her lips and said, "What if everybody did that?" And I recognize some of these comments these kids are saying. I can touch my toes, see? And I'm so hungry. I gotta go potty. And why can't we read one of these other books? I've already read this one. Yeah. And then something totally random. My mom said that recycling is a very good thing and that we should all do it. Okay. At the swimming pool, I just splashed a little, and the lifeguard blew his whistle and said, "What if everyone did that?" Look, there's an empty swimming pool up there. Or maybe there isn't. Oh, there is. There is an empty swimming pool. Okay, what about on the bus? On the bus, I just stood up to see the fire truck. Mr. Gearshift glared at me in the rearview mirror and said, "What if everyone did that?" And here we have the bus tipping over because everyone's trying to look at one side of the bus. Just once, I didn't hang up my coat on the rack at school. Miss Sanders made me pick it up and said, "What if everyone did that?" Big pile of coats in the middle of the room. At recess, I threw just one snowball at Sammy. Mr. Walters saw me. When he sent me to stand by the wall, he said, "What if everyone did that?" Oh no. Snowballs in the face. That's not so good. When I came home, I gave my mom a hug. What if everyone did that? Everyone should. Oh, yes, everyone should. Well, that's just a quick, cute little story about responsibility, because whenever we're doing something, we have to think about not just ourselves. Like, it might be great to just want to throw our coat on the floor, but then if we think of that question from this book, what if everyone did that? We're thinking about our responsibility, because there's other people around. There's a whole world around. And if I don't do it, what if nobody does it? Or if I do it, what if everybody does it? Those are really good questions to ask when we're thinking about our jobs, even when the jobs are kind of like, oh, I don't want to make my bed or clean the house. But if no one cleaned the house, imagine what your house would look like. If no one cleaned the world, imagine what the world would look like. Dirty! So, it's not just someone else's job. Guess what? It's all of our jobs. It's all of us. What if everyone did that? So, let's all go hug someone today. We don't have to do it now, but you can. Let's hug someone today. Let's show people in our lives that we love them. And let's take responsibility for our world and for our lives, and always ask the question, what if everybody did that? Okay? Let's do it.
This is published in a book called Poetry of Presence. It's the work of Rebecca Baggett. And she wrote it for her daughters. I want to tell you that the world is still beautiful. I tell you that. Despite children violated on city streets, shot down in schoolrooms, despite the slow poisons seeping from the old and hidden sins into our air, soil, and water, despite the thinning film that encloses our aching world, despite my own terror and despair, I want you to look again and again, to recognize the tender grasses, curled like a baby's fine hairs around your fingers. A recurring miracle. To see that the river rocks shine like God, that the crisp voices of the orange and gold October leaves are laughing at death. I want you to look beneath the grass, to note the fragile hieroglyphs of ant, snail, beetle. I want you to understand that you are no more and no less necessary than the brown recluse, the ruby-throated hummingbird, the humpback whale, the profligate mimosa. I want to say, like Neruda, that I am waiting for a great and common tenderness, that I still believe we are capable of attention, that anyone who notices the world will want to save it. In the thoughts of this poet, we're delighted to welcome Christina and Rochelle, co-workers, who will share together a song that reminds us that despite everything, this world is still beautiful.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright, blessed day and the dark, sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of the people passing by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. And I think to myself, wonderful world.
The archetypal stories that shape so much of our understanding begin in ancient texts we have collected and called Genesis, a collection of stories about our relationships with each other, with the world we live in, stories that are not history, stories that are not science, stories that are literature, poems, myths, ancient narratives. This is one of those. Now, Adam and Eve had a son, and his name was Cain. And then Eve conceived a second child. She gave birth to Cain's brother, and they named him Abel. Abel grew up to be a keeper of sheep, and Cain a tiller of the ground. In the course of time, each brother brought their offerings to their God. Cain brought the fruit of the ground, and Abel, for his part, brought a firstling of his flock. And their God had greater regard for Abel and his offering. So Cain was very angry. And he said to his brother, "Let's go out into the field." And when they were in the field, Cain took the opportunity to strike his brother Abel and kill him. And then Cain heard a voice ask, "Where's your brother Abel?" And he said, "How should I know? Am I my brother's keeper?" In this violent, ancient myth, that terrible tribal story, in my view, has one redeeming feature. Beyond the mythology of a God who sows seeds of violence with acts of favoritism, there's still something significant in this story that is worthy of our consideration. It's a story that asks an important question. In the world of that ancient myth, Cain's asked where Abel was, and he says, "How should I know? Why are you asking me? Am I my brother's keeper?" Despite the defensiveness and the attempt to evade responsibility, This character, even as he gives away his guilt, is posing a profound question. It is such a significant question that the story never even attempts to answer it. It's a haunting question. What is our relationship to one another? What is our relationship to family, friend, stranger, enemy? For whom are we responsible? What is the nature of our responsibility for each other? Where does it start? Where does it end? Am I my sister and my brother's keeper? It's easy to miss what's loaded into the play on words here. In a jealous rage, the farmer kills the shepherd, enacting the deep divisions of the ancient world. Those deep divisions between the settled agricultural community of farmers and the nomadic community of herders. How should community be organized? Which way of life should have control of the resources of the land? How do competing ways of living and accessing resources relate to one another? And who decides? Who's in control? Our proclivity for polarizing has long been with us. The ways we divide ourselves from each other and determine dominance, the ways we develop hierarchies and enshrine control, the way our notions of supremacy and domination begin. So Cain is deflecting responsibility for his actions by asking, how in the world should he know the whereabouts of his brother, the shepherd, the one who was the keeper of the sheep? So he's really asking, am I the shepherd of the shepherd? Am I the keeper of the sheep keeper? Am I my brother's keeper? Think about it for a moment. To be a keeper is to have someone in our charge. Our ancients consolidated the sky gods and the earth gods, the fertility gods and the rain gods, and they worshiped their tribal god as the sleepless keeper of their lives. A supreme super being who never went off duty. In fact, in one of their favorite psalms, one of their favorite songs, they sing, God is our keeper. God will keep our life, our going out and our coming in now and always. But the relationship between the keeper and the kept is a relationship of dependence, a relationship built on domination and submission, a relationship in which one is in charge of the other, a relationship which by definition cannot be mutual. Beyond the tribalism that shapes this story, we can recover an even more ancient memory. A memory that runs deeply in everything that is. The energy in which we live and move and have our being. The source of our love and our loving. The ground of our being and becoming is not a supreme caretaker or sky keeper, not a being, but being itself, life itself, which exists in this very precarious balance of relationships between the elements that allow life to emerge and evolve and exist as a communion of elements. It doesn't invoke dependence or dominance, but interdependence and the mutuality of being responsible for the gift of being here. And if there's no tribal God who is our keeper, perhaps we are not our sister or brother's keeper either. Perhaps the nature of our responsibility for the gift of being, for being blood and breath and bone and human consciousness, is not to be keepers, but to be community, to be relatives, to be kin. Maybe the story we're left to write with each other is not about being our brother's keeper, but about what does it mean? What does it look like to be my brother's brother or my sister's brother? Maybe the relationship that the character Cain so fatally violated in the story was not the duty of being his brother's keeper, but the responsibility of being his brother's brother. We speak of family as those with whom we share some biological or legal relationship. But perhaps when we speak of our family of origin, it would be more accurate to say that the stars are our family of origin, or the sea is our family of origin, or we are descendants of bacteria, or relatives of those big-brained bipeds. By kin, do we only mean those of our species that we are related to by the accident of birth? Even Jesus of Nazareth, in his first century life, radically redefined family. When his mothers and brothers, and presumably his sisters, although the story doesn't bother to tell us about them, when they traveled from Nazareth to where he was teaching on the shores of the Galilee, the story makes it appear that he seems quite rude in brushing off the announcement that his family is here by asking, well, who's my mother? Who's my brother? Perhaps who's my sister? Aren't we all in the family way with each other? Aren't we all related to each other? For Jesus of Nazareth, family wasn't defined as a shared gene pool, or as those living at the same address or having the same surname. Family was bigger than that. And his sense of family redefined citizenship by taking on responsibility for our lives and for each other, especially for the most vulnerable among us. And the community of life that we find ourselves in redefines our understanding of family even more. There are those great teachers all around us who would help us learn that we're kin, not only with the members of our own species, but we're children of the pond, and we're cousins of the trees, and we're partners of the insects, and the birds, and the animals, and our survival as a species, and the survival of those with whom we share this planetary life may well depend upon us seeing ourselves as members of the community of life and beginning to take a responsibility to be part of the whole, part of one earth family. And surely the poet is right. Anyone who notices the world must want to save it, must want to reconstitute it, in Adrian Rich's language, must want to take responsibility for a great and common tenderness that would move us to be a brother or a sister to all our relations. When some of our settler ancestors came to this continent, they built a monument to mark the freedom they sought as immigrants. Economic and religious freedom, freedom from the dominance of a ruling class, to be free from religious persecution, oppression, poverty. And in the harbor in New York City, a statue was erected, a statue of liberty. But where is the corresponding statue? Where is the statue of responsibility? Because for every freedom, for every liberty, is there not a corresponding responsibility? As the human creature, our evolution has gifted us not only with our old limbic brain, but also a neocortex, not making us the most intelligent species, but giving us the capacity to respond in complex ways, not just fight or flight. Giving us the capacity to be responsible, having the ability to respond. Cain's question is one that we have to answer, each of us, with our lives. And it's not only a question to answer individually, it's a question to answer collectively, as a society, as a species. If our world is to be reconstituted, the imperialism of being keepers is going to have to give way to the responsibility of being kin. We're going to have to cease to be competing clans, pitting our interests against one another, and find a way to live cooperatively as though our lives depended on each other, which they do. And to find a way to transcend the supremacy of being keepers and discover the mutuality of being brothers and sisters. Because we can no longer afford to live as Cain's children. We have to become Abel's brothers and sisters, taking responsibility for our actions, for the well-being of one another, and refusing to entrust the well-being of the world to any tribal deity, but accepting responsibility that is ours to reconstitute the world again and again. We might not be our sister or our brother's keeper. But if our species is going to evolve and our planet's going to thrive, it will be because we have chosen to become brothers and sisters in the community of life. Our humanity depends on our willingness to live with responsibility to the whole web of life. And in these times in which cruelty and violence is all too common, let us ask ourselves where we can bring that great and common tenderness to the small circles in which we live our lives and to which we have a deep responsibility. we come seeking to strengthen our intentions, to live in ways that reflect these values in which we are rooted. And as we consider our responsibility for the world as it is, for community as we would have it be, for our families as we wish they were, for our relationships, all our relationships, I invite us to offer these words with one another. They are words that we have adapted from the words of Greta Vosper. We pray with one another. In caring for one another, may we be untiring. In hearing from one another, may we be respectful. In sheltering one another, may we be strong. In holding one another, may we be tender. In forgiving one another, may we be generous. In the expectations we have of one another, may we be realistic. In the stories we share with one another, may we find wisdom. In seeking meaning with one another, may we be curious. And in loving one another, may we be unfailing as we seek to live more nearly as we pray. May it be so. This is an opportunity for us to express gratitude as a community for so much that enriches our lives with one another and strengthens what it is we have capacity to do in the greater community and in the world in which we live. So I want to express appreciation for all the ways each of you contribute to the well-being of this community and the ways that you make possible the work we do in the world, and the gifts that we experience with one another that seek to strengthen our capacity as we gather spiritual community in so many different ways. Also a reminder that there are a number of ways that you can help us with your financial support, either by cash or check in the box you find at the back, or online anytime, or by pre-authorized remittances, or by the purchase of grocery cards.
As we live and breathe and move and decide and act and think in our days and in our hours and in the weeks ahead, we ponder how we are there for each other, how we might people keep for each other, how we might bear the responsibility of love and justice in our world, and of shining the light for ourselves and for others wherever we go. And so as we go from this place, may we see it as our task and our trade, our vocation to live this light, to be responsible for one another and our world. May we go in the light and the intentions of our hearts.